What is up, everybody? Jason Burmis here. Wow, we already have 12 people watching. 8 thumbs up. What is going on?
Oh, yeah.
Well, look at that. I didn't even know. I'm with Steve. These guys are about to go start live streaming, but let's go over the big points, right, of what we know now from the last 2 days of the hearings. Yesterday, we saw what the defense is going to lay out. We saw that they said the indictment didn't come until after that Rohrabacher meeting, which they felt was on behalf of Trump. And then last night, before the hearings today, Dotcom seemed to reiterate that with a private message via Julian Assange, where he said he had set up the diplomatic channels and to take the deal on SR, aka Seth Rich.
Yeah.
And Julian basically replied, I mean, go check out the screenshot yourself, that he doesn't have to make deals. He's protected by the First Amendment and the Constitution, etc. And we know where it fell apart from there. Today, we're finding out that that private firm that was spying on Julian Assange via the U.S. administration, via Sheldon Adelson, they actually were encouraged in July of 2016, after the leaks had made it, to possibly kidnap Julian Assange, make something look like an accident.
Yeah, and or poison.
And or poison, Steve.
Yeah,
and or poison. So, you know, obviously that is extremely important to talk about. I'm going to be going to the Roger Stone hearing in a bit, and I'm going to be talking, hopefully, to Owen Schroyer and others about Assange. Out of nowhere, Alex Jones is coming to D.C. tomorrow. I didn't know that was happening. Did you know that was happening?
I didn't know it was happening.
Apparently he's coming with Gavin McInnes is going to be here.
Interesting.
Patrick Howley, who I've had on my show actually, and others, and it's a First Amendment emergency summit at a hotel. The emergency's been going on for a while, and if it was such a big deal, why weren't these people out in the streets on Monday or over in London by Belmarsh, where again the media in that article, in the latest article, is still kind of trying to spin that because of the protesters Assange couldn't hear.
Yeah.
But the article I read, Steve, they didn't even mention the fact that he's behind that plastic. That he's in an enclosure. He's in a Pope mobile, no Pope.
Yeah, the wheels are off the Pope mobile. It doesn't move anymore. It's a fucking human cage. Assange is part of the human zoo of what happens when you tell the truth in the public sphere and don't get permission from the gatekeepers to let a little bit of the narrative out.
That's absolutely right. And, you know, we went down to the area in which Seth Rich was murdered, and almost the exact spot. You can go check our Twitter, you check out the video I did last night. We failed in lighting the candles, but we succeeded in putting his name there and letting people know, you know, maybe a neighborhood changes in 4 years, but it was well lit while we were there. There was a police presence. It just seems to me, if you're going to rob somebody and murder them, you take their stuff.
You take their stuff. Yeah, you don't just take their laptop or just take a flash drive. You take their wallet, you take their watch. I've noticed more shiny shoes in Washington, D.C. than I've ever seen in my entire life. I will never have the shiny shoe collection it will take to live here. But I mean, I would assume that Seth had, you know, maybe some Ferragamos or some nice loafers on, something like that. Yeah, still had his shoes on. Real quick though, Julian Assange was strip searched twice from cage to cage. He was moved 9 different times over an 11-hour period. Make with those numbers whatever you will. They're basically parading him around as a cautionary tale at this point.
More than a cautionary tale. I mean, if you look at what the lawyers are saying, and, you know, I don't like them framing it this way, but they're not wrong. They say if this guy gets extradited to the United States, there's a high chance of suicide just because of where they're going to put it. And we all know, you know, if the lawyers are saying that means murder. That means murder. I mean, you can't tell me that they haven't already put this guy in a situation where he's not able to defend himself. His wits may not be about him all the time because of the solitary confinement. They lied to us a month and a half ago and said he was no longer in solitary confinement. His father refuted that just days ago. The press hasn't picked that up.
Well, and he called his friend over the Christmas holidays and said, they're drugging me. And his friend said, you sound drugged. So he's being medicated against his will. He's being tortured in solitary. Solitary confinement is a form of torture. So in that aspect, he's currently being tortured. He's being denied access to his lawyers. He's being denied access to his letters. He's being denied access to the internet. He's being made to take his doctor's appointments instead of human person-to-person contact with visitors, or instead of contact with his lawyers.
And, you know, once again, when you think about how long he's been in an Ecuadorian embassy, dragged out, now in prison, this spans pretty much three administrations. You know what I'm saying? This is
I don't have the exact number, but off the top of my head, it's like 3,374 or 75 days of arbitrary detention, both in the embassy and in Belmarsh now.
If you don't know Steve from Slow News Day, now you do. Woke in SoCal. Listen, think about this. He exposes the war crimes of the Bush administration. All of a sudden, you know, I'm still hearing people yesterday telling me he's a rapist because of the propaganda that administration put out against him, and working with the Swedish government to try to hold him. You know what I mean? So it starts there. It starts with the Bush 2 administration. It moves into the Obama administration, where he has to jump bail, or whatever you want to say. There wasn't really any bail there. I mean, there wasn't really any charges yet. He was under investigation.
So what happened is now he had a hearing in London, and he went to the initial hearing, and then Sweden tried to get him to come back to Sweden.
Yes.
And he said, if you can promise me that if I touch down in Sweden and I won't be immediately black bagged and driven to a freaking CIA torture facility, yes, I'll come to Sweden. They said, yeah, we're not going to do that. He goes to the Ecuadorian embassy. I would like to seek asylum for political persecution. The Ecuadorian embassy says, okay. And then a week later, after he had already been granted asylum, the warrant for skipping bail is issued. So it's a false warrant on its face because they waited until after he had already been granted asylum.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know what, he spends the better part of 7 years in there? Yep. Better part of 7 years in there, only to be dragged out the front door and put in that black bag situation without the bag.
Trafficked for an IMF loan.
Yes, absolutely. And again, the organization still continues, despite all this, despite all of that, still continues to put out leaks that matter. And our administration, even though Trump said, hey, there's no Russian collusion, the Russian stuff is fake, when it comes to the OPCW and being before the UN and the whistleblowers that are now, what are they, leaktivists? They're leaktivists because they tried to go through the proper channels and say, hey, when we went and investigated, there was no evidence of a chemical weapons attack in Syria, and this report totally flipped that on its head.
Yeah, and that's what those leaks are. You went through them, I went through them on Slow News Day. The leaks are internal emails.
Yes.
From the people on the team, the fact-finding mission, going, why is this in the report? Why was this left out of the report? Why does the report state this as a conclusion when we had not come to that conclusion? And that's what the leaks themselves are. The last two drops that Wikileaks has done, the OPCW reports and the Namibia fisheries. In Namibia, it resulted in criminal charges. And with OPCW, it could upend the entire organization. That's how relevant WikiLeaks still is. They're still changing the fucking world right now. And they need to be back at full capacity.
Guys, they're about to go live on Action for Assange, do a vigil talking about everything, getting in touch with Taylor over in London as well, who's on the ground outside of the courthouse most of the day. I'm sure that's where she's at, and I know that she's doing a bunch of other stuff, but she's going to be joining them. Action for Assange is the spot to go. I want to say I love you guys. Thank you so much. We're going to see if I'm going to stay through tomorrow. I'm not quite sure. With Jones coming, it might be hard not to stay through.
You know what? If Jones really wanted a First Amendment summit tomorrow, he could meet us at the William Truesdale Detention Center where they're housing Chelsea Manning and Jeremy Hammond right now, and we could talk about the First Amendment.
100%. Thumbs this video
Probably
up.
not a good enough steakhouse in the parking lot of the detention center. But I could bring a grill, Alex. I got a grill. There's a hibachi out back. Like Trader Joe's up the street.
Why don't we have a chili time cook-off while we're out there? We'll have a big bowl of chili. Anyway, guys, I love you. Thank you. I'm going to be heading, again, over to the courthouse at the Roger Stone hearing and talking to Owen Schroyer about Assange, because he's also supposedly speaking at this First Amendment thing, and I think that's important. Guys, thanks again.